It's hump day.
Hump day!
It's hump day.
Hump day!
Need a standing desk so I can.
There we go.
All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to Hump Day Hangouts, episode 131. Today is the 10th of May, and we got three of us here today. It's myself, Bradley, and Hernan. Marco, I believe, is about to do some traveling, and Chris is on like a dial-up modem, so there's no way he's coming in today. So, Hernan, how's it going? You froze up, but I think you might still be there.
Hey, yeah, webinar jam is acting up. I don't know what the freak is going on. Anyways, I'm glad to be here.
Good deal. All right, Bradley, how about yourself?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here as well. Have kind of light on questions today so far, so we'll see, but we'll get through what we can. I know there's a few announcements to get started, correct?
Yeah, we definitely got a few. Tomorrow, we sent out an email earlier, but tomorrow is a structured data webinar. So if you have any interest in finding out some really good stuff, structured data, I'm not going to go through it all, but I am going to put the link on the page, and it'll be in the YouTube description. So please click on that, and it's your standard webinar page, but we got a lot of details on there. I'm not going to try to go through that off the top of my head, but that's going to be Marco with Brian Rodden, and then several of us are going to be there. So by all means, please come check that out. You need to attend live if you want to check this out. It's your one chance to see that. After that, we haven't set a price. We'll have to talk to Marco, but I imagine that's going to be expensive. So be there. Coming up on Monday, we've got a really cool webinar as well with Justin Sardi. I know a bunch of you guys know who he is. And so he's going to be talking to us about, obviously, video-related SEO stuff. That's it for now. I'll have some more emails coming out later. I'm going to talk to him, and then we'll get that set up.
Video
so that'll
ads. He's going to be talking more about ads than SEO, isn't he?
Pretty
sure.
Yeah. Sorry. No, I had the notes wrong. I was like, wait, that's Justin. That sounds right. No. Yeah, definitely video ads. But I think it's going to be with some updates as well to TubeSift, which is a really cool program. So that's one that, again, we use for YouTube targeting. I know, Bradley, you use that program, don't you?
Yes, a lot. Yep.
Awesome. All right. So I'll have some more information for you guys on that. And then also, obviously, if you're new to Semantic Mastery, check out the Syndication Academy. That's syndication.academy. And I'll pop that link up here. And then if you are looking for done-for-you services, head over to Servspace. That's servspace.com, and you can get your free account. If you haven't been there recently, by all means, head back over to Servspace and check it out. We're in the middle of a redesign, but we've also added a lot of services. And as well, now at the top, you can see if I'm on the screen here. At the top bar, you can click on tools, and there's some really cool free tools. One of them is a structured data tool, and then I'll go check out the rest of the stuff there. And then Bradley, I think you've got something coming up, right?
Yeah, one thing, two things I want to mention. Number one is frequently asked questions, guys. Also, a lot of questions that get asked here questions that get asked a lot are on our frequently asked questions or in our knowledge base area, which you can find at support.semanticmastery.com. Again, that's support.semanticmastery.com, and just click on the knowledge base for the product that you have questions about, or look through all of them, because there's a whole lot of really good ones in there as well. The other webinar that we're going to be doing next week is the Rocket Video Ranker Pro bonus webinar. For any of you guys that ended up picking up the Tube Authority Rocket and Rocket Video Ranker Pro suite from Bill Cousins, from our webinar, we're going to be having the bonus webinar from 5 until 6 p.m. Eastern next Wednesday. So immediately following Hump Day Hangouts, it will be a 1-hour webinar. I'm going to have to keep it short, or keep it to that 60-minute mark, because I get my daughter on Wednesday evenings for dinner. So, but yeah, it should be good. It'll be me and Bill Cousins and Lem Moore, and we're going to be talking about some different strategies, both SEO for how to get better results, as well as how to use that tool for prospecting and landing clients, for lead gen and that kind of stuff. So make sure that you're there, and we may even make that available for anybody to join, because it's going to be, I haven't determined that yet, but we may make that available for everybody. And if that's the case, just be on the lookout for an email if you want to come attend. Okay.
Awesome. And don't forget, also, one of the great reasons to go to the support site, support.semanticmastery.com, is you can find Bradley's artwork on various posts there. So his drawings over time have been saved for. No, they're really good. I mean, a lot of times because it's tough to draw that stuff on the fly, and so we've saved the ones that Bradley's done, like where he's explained different tier structures. But
I've got some better ones. The most recent one that I did was for the Syndication Academy update webinar was pretty good. Marco even commented on it. So
nice. All right, I think that's it. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get into questions now. And take the screen. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yep. Can you hear me?
We're good.
Now I can, yeah. There's that weird delay on Webinar Jam. Okay. All right. So Alexander's up. He says, couldn't find the answer to the exact question, to that exact question. Okay. Even in a WordPress site, should I build the blog in a subdomain so I can be a little more aggressive with links? For me, looks like it loses a little power. Subdomain not on the domain, but for sure is safer. Yeah, it is safer, Alexander. But I mean, you can do that. I don't see the point really of doing that unless you were going to be like really aggressive. I don't really see the point in doing that. I would leave the blog on the root domain if you're or from the subdomain if that's what you're running it from. I wouldn't like what I'm saying is if it's a WordPress site on the root domain, I wouldn't separate the blog out of that unless there was a specific reason for doing it, not just for content syndication, which is I think what you're talking about, because you can use the blog on the main site for the content distribution, right? So like in other words, you publish to the main blog and that syndicates out. And I don't see why you would be worried about being super aggressive unless you were going to be posting like a whole bunch of spammy content or maybe posting too frequently, in which case, then that could be a problem. Or like if you were using like automated content generators to post to the blog. So then in which case, I would say absolutely put that on a subdomain. But if you're creating like, typical content for the blog for that site that would make sense, that's relevant, it adds value, that kind of stuff, then I would say just do it right from the root blog. But, again, if you're going to be using like automated content generators or you're using spun content or just low quality content and content sources, then yes, I would separate that out and do the content distribution from a subdomain. And that would be to protect your root from those spammy activities. You wouldn't be hosting or publishing that spam, lower quality content on your root domain at that point. Hernan, what do you think?
Yeah, I would still keep it on the root domain. Like, even when you're doing subdomains and link building, you can be a little bit more aggressive. But if you have something valuable on the root domain, I wouldn't do it. Even if you can, use 301s. We have gone through this several times, but I wouldn't do it. So I would still, if it is a WordPress site, I will still do it on the root domain. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I will still take care of that, even if I'm blasting a subdomain, because if it's working right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work, in the near future. We already know that. So tread carefully.
Yeah, again, I only if I was doing some like really spammy stuff. As far as being aggressive, you can be aggressive from your main blog as long as it's high quality content, right? That it's good, it's relevant, it's adding value, that kind of stuff. You can be aggressive from there because essentially what you're doing is just publishing content. And that syndicates out to the network, which in turn builds the links and the social signals and blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes, Alexander. So, again, unless I was doing automated content or spun just low quality stuff or posting too frequently, then I wouldn't worry about it. I'd just do it right on the root blog. The other part of that question, or second part, says other quick one. No follow internal links really save more juice for the other internal do follow links, or just avoid sending them. They're part of the linking juice. One follow and one no follow. The follow would get only 50% and the other 50% would be lost. No, the way that it works, Alexander, is that if you have two links in a article body, like a post body, and one of them is no follow and one of them is do follow, then the 100% or damn close to it, there may be a slight loss from the no follow, but it's not much. The 100% of any link juice flowing into that page, so equity flowing in that page should flow to that follow link. right? It's not 100%. There's always a loss in every hop. There's a loss. So going through that URL, but what it's basically doing is it's not splitting it between those two URLs. It's not saying, okay, there's two links on this or in the content body of this post. And so therefore half of the juice is going to go through the do follow link and the other half of the juice is going to hit the no follow link and stop. That's not how it works. It's just like water, pouring water into a cup. It's going to take, or just liquid flowing. That's how I always think about it. Is think about how liquid flows. It always takes the path of least resistance, but it's not going to just stop at the no follow link. It's going to work its way over to the follow link and go that way. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't, don't worry about, there's a slight loss through every link. So, and then there may be some slight loss on no follow links, but it's nominal, it's marginal. Okay. And that's what they used to call that page rank sculpting. When you would, internal links, you would, link with some that were no follow and some that were do follow. And I don't know if you'd still call it page rank sculpting. Maybe it's, theme sculpting now. I don't know what you would call it now, but I still practice it. I know Hernan doesn't, but I still been practicing, like no following, like navigation links, for example, to like contact us and about us pages and that kind of stuff. I always try to direct where the bots and the link equity is flowing through the site. And you can accomplish that by doing, adding no follow tags strategically. Okay, Brian's up. He says, how do you manage your customers? Do you use a CRM? I noticed all the free CRM scripts inside Softaculous. I was wondering if you have used them before. No, I mean, as far as manage my customer, I'll be honest with you. I keep a pretty simple management, I guess, process. All of my clients and lead gen properties are all, all my local stuff is all inside of Bright Local, because that's where I do most of my reports from and everything. My reporting is through Bright Local. And so I just have everything in there, which is great because they have like a client or contact database that you go in and you can add, multiple locations per client. You can keep all kinds of information. So I guess it acts as a CRM, Bright Local does. But I use it specifically just to generate reports. And then I have, I have a Google, I use Google Drive for just about everything. So I got a spreadsheet for each client, a separate folder and Drive for each client, that kind of stuff, and where I keep all their data. And I just create reports from Bright Local, and then, I'll email those out to the customers and that kind of stuff. That's how I've always, and I also use Google Contacts to keep, so that, like when I'm sending out, or somebody calls or anything like that, it always comes up with the correct name. But that's it. I mean, I don't use any fancy CRM software. I never have. It just was one additional piece of software I never felt like I needed to learn. And Bright Local handles everything for me as far as like just keeping all the relevant, that in my spreadsheets is all that I need to be able to keep all my lead gen properties and my clients straight and all in the same locations, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you guys use? Both of you.
Well, I don't use a CRM either. The thing is that I think, and this is probably, a misconception of mine, that you can use, or it's better to use a CRM when you are handling a bunch of clients, when you're handling, I don't know, maybe 10 plus clients, but since I usually don't, I usually work with maybe 3 or 4 clients / partners at the time. I usually do not need one, and usually when it comes to active campaign or maybe, spreadsheets, that's the job. But when you have a lot of steps and little things or little clients, I think that we might need to implement a CRM when it comes to GRT at some point, because it's going to be much more volume. But at the end of the day, we don't need, like, I personally don't need, or I don't feel like need a CRM, because again, there's only like 2 or 3 major projects going on at any given time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I'll take the opposite stance, although I think it's totally possible to do this with a Gmail account. I use Contactually, and so far I like it. I think it's overkill for what I do, because I tend to do about the same as Hernan, where I've only got a few, not even a handful of clients at once. But the ones I'm talking to, the process takes long enough that I like to have reminders, who I've talked to. Has it been a week? Did I send out, a request for information or something? I haven't heard from them in a week. And because it's really easy to lose track of that. And so I'm paying, I think, something like $50 or $60 a month But my rationalization for that is, let's say it's $50 a month, that's $600 a year. If I close one client, it more than pays for itself.
Yeah.
So more than that, it's losing that, dream deal. So maybe they locked me into that by fear, but I like it. And there's some additional features that are pretty nice. So again, I don't think it's necessarily needed, but I like that it's handled and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally agree. I mean, when I was at the height of my agency days, when I was, my agency was a lot bigger. It's a lot smaller now intentionally because I've reduced it, like the amount of clients that I work with. From at the top, I had about 30 clients, and now I'm at 11. And I actually just picked up another client today. I typically don't do any more client work, but it was a referral from one of my clients that I've had for 4 years now. So it was a good referral. And because of that, I quoted him a decent price. It was higher than I probably would have charged 2 years ago, but it wasn't unreasonable like I have been recently. Like usually now when I get client, people contacting me for marketing services as on a client level, I quote like such ridiculously high prices because I don't want to do it. And if they're willing to pay me that much, then I'll certainly do it. But otherwise, I don't want to do it. But I actually picked up another client today. But like what I was saying was, I agree that I think if we, like for example, with our traffic agency that we're going to be opening up, we're going to be doing a lot of volume, and so we're going to need a good CRM for that kind of stuff. But for the most part, like I said, Bright Local handles everything. And then, as Adam said, Google Calendar. I use Google Calendar for everything. Like I live by it. If it's not in the calendar, it doesn't get done. So I set up notifications and all that kind of stuff in Calendar to remind me to, certain things that have to be done and all that kind of stuff. But I like keeping it simple where possible. And so just having to learn another piece of software is not something I want to do. I can tell you that.
I got to give a shout out to 2 more pieces of software that I really like. One of them is called Focuster. It's Focuster, which is a really awesome to-do app that integrates with your calendar. So it auto schedules around your calendar. So if you put in create, client proposal 30 minutes, it fits it into your day based upon what you have open, which is awesome. And then I've tried a bunch of calendars for working with clients to let scheduling happen. And I know a lot of people already use this, but I'll just give another thumbs up for Acuity. I've used a bunch of different services and recently switched over to them, and that's been really nice.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, Greg's up. He says, hi, I have an affiliate website promoting several companies. An important page promoting the top company ranks very well, but that established company is now partnered with a worldwide known brand, which itself has not previously had any of its own products in this niche. Similar example would be if Gary Fisher Mountain Bike Company partnered with Nike and still makes and markets the bikes, but the Nike brand name will be on all the bikes. The company website is still Gary Fisher with the same Gary Fisher models, but the Nike brand name is now on the bikes and the website pages. I need to have both company names on the same page. Web searchers will continue using the original company name for at least several years, but there are now new searches in this niche for the huge brand name. My current page URL slug contains only the name of the original company. Would you create a new page using a slug with both company names and redirect the old page to the new? Just change the H1, H2, and some of the text and add in the second brand name on the current page. Thanks. That's a good question. If you are ranking already with the current page, I don't know that I would want, this is my opinion. I'd like to get Hernan's opinion as well, but I don't know that I would want to mess with the URL, because if you change too much on a page, especially when you're in a competitive market where, in other words, if there's other people competing for those top spots, which most of them are going to be, and you start changing things structurally, you will see some dancing. There's no question. And that includes changing the URL. Adding in some mentions of Nike into the page itself without changing the slug is less likely to cause at least as significant a dancing as changing the slug would. It doesn't mean that it won't dance a little. It probably will. I don't know that for sure, but it probably will. But changing the slug, it's almost guaranteed to dance. I can tell you that. So I would probably, personally, my own opinion would be to probably leave the slug as it was and just add the additional content onto the page. And then I would also look into, and this would actually be a pretty good topic possibly for tomorrow's structured data webinar. I don't know how far we're going to get into Q&A during that webinar, but I would also try to figure out a way to mention both brands within the structured data for that page. In the JSON-LD markup that you put up in the header or whatever, so that, both brands are being mentioned or cited within the structured data, so that it can help to rank for both search queries, if that makes sense. But again, I don't think changing the slug's really the best idea, but that's my own personal opinion. Hernan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Bradley. In fact, there's been these kind of tests, when you're talking about an article. I'm assuming that Greg has some sort of e-commerce solution. That's why he's saying, he needs to be optimizing the products for both brands. But when you have a blog or when you have, a website, usually articles and topics or interests and maybe keywords surrounding the topic, they change. They go forward, or they change during time because people are getting interested in some other topics, or maybe there's something new there's a new discovering about the topic, etc., etc. So what people usually do, with good results, is to go back to the article and add content, yes, optimize for the new keywords. So that's exactly what I would do. I wouldn't change if you've got good rankings. I wouldn't change the URL, even if it is with a 301, because you might lose some rankings. Yeah. I would definitely add some more content, maybe not all at once, but see, if you add a couple of paragraphs with the new keywords, I would definitely go and try to re-optimize a little bit the metadata and the JSON-LD or the schemas you were saying, Bradley. But I wouldn't change the URL, because if you change it, it's going to be a completely new page under Google Sites, even if you do a 301. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly what I would do. I would change and slowly add content, like add a couple of paragraphs and wait for, maybe 15 days, a couple of weeks, then go back and add a little bit more. But that's what I would do.
Very good. Yeah, guys, structural changes will often cause significant dancing. Content changes will often not, or will reduce or minimize the dancing. Doesn't mean you won't see it, but it's usually often a lot less significant or volatile, if that makes sense. So, okay, Don Johnson, I have a client that has locations in several spread out states, Texas, Florida, California. So creating any kind of city pages on the route doesn't make sense. Obviously, all actual Google My Business locations will be subdomains, but other supporting cities without Google My Business will also be subdomains. Are there any risks to having too many city subdomains? No, I don't think so, Don. I've never reached a limit of, I don't have more than, maybe 20 subdomains on any one site. But if it's legit, then it shouldn't cause any problems. If you're creating, dozens or hundreds or thousands of subdomains for spammy stuff, I know we've done it. We've done it for testing stuff. Then that may throw up a flag. But if you're doing legit business locations or city subdomains, then absolutely, I wouldn't worry about it at all. Just know that, remember, I prefer the subdomain method. There's no question, but only to a point. It depends on what kind of scale I'm going to be building a site up to. Because in other words, if I'm scaling to, if I started off as a statewide site, but I only covered a couple of, and I wanted to do let's say county subdomains or something like that, then that would make sense. But when you start getting to city subdomains, now that's each subdomain would have its own WordPress installation, guys. That's a lot. It can quickly add up to be an enormous management nightmare to manage that many individual WordPress sites. Obviously, you can use stuff like, main WP and all that kind of stuff to try to manage these big, large, multiple, dozens or even hundreds of WordPress sites. But that's still, again, cumbersome. So you got to weigh out, first of all, where do you think you're going to go with this site? How many pages or cities or how much area are you going to cover? That kind of stuff, and then determine is it going to be worth building out separate subdomains for every one of those, or would it be better to reduce overhead and management and just do and silo the main site out and use categories and subcategories and posts? So in other words, use probably a complex silo structure in this case, And that way you only have basically one management or one site to manage. Again, it really, Don, it has to be up to you to determine what, how much risk you're willing to handle, and how much, and also how much management you're willing to handle. And then you have to strike a balance between the two and determine which is the better option. Again, though, just as far as answering your question about the subdomains, specifically, if they're legit, if they're there for a reason, and then I don't see it being a problem, because I've seen sites out there with thousands of subdomains and they're fine. So, what do you think, Hernan? He must be muted.
Oops, sorry. What about now? Better?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I was about to say that when you're, the thing is that when you're planning out, when you're structuring out, this is kind of a structure. You need to pan out the entire structure of the website before going out there and building it.
That's right.
Even further, if you know that's going to be a big project, I would suggest that you go with the least options possible on the subdomain. Meaning, if you're doing 3 or more, let's say that you're building a directory of aestheticians, maybe you have 3 or 4 categories that you will use. Those will be your subdomains, Now, when you're going on a city base, that would be a much broader category. So the states would be your subdomains. Does that make sense? So you want to pick you want to pick the least amount of variables when it comes to subdomains. That's why we usually go for states on the subdomains, and then cities as subpages, because cities you have 30,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
But states you only have 52 or 54.
Yeah.
So depending on how broad you're going, so that would be my intake. But when you're sitting down to plan out the entire structure, you need to have this in mind. And this is kind of the previous work before you're actually out there setting up the website, because I agree with Bradley, it's going to be a lot of managing if you go too deep with subdomains. Yeah,
and that's a really good point that you mentioned. That's actually a really good strategy, Don. It would be to set up state subdomains then, like what Hernan said, because just in your example, you're mentioning 3 states, and I know it may be more. But my point is then you would only have, if it was just 3 states, Texas, Florida, California, you would have those 3 subdomains, right? And then you could set up silos within the subdomain sites. To what I would do is I would end up going with probably a complex silo structure on the subdomain sites, setting up the counties as the top level categories, and then the cities as the subcategories, if that makes sense. That's what I would do, because that way, like Hernan said, at most, you're going to have 50 subdomains if you covered the entire US. And that's a hell of a lot more manageable than trying to do a separate subdomain for each. And then just remember, for each Google My Business location, like let's say Los Angeles, California, or let's say Houston, Texas was one of them, right? Then if you had texas.clowncollege.com/Houston, or whatever county Houston is in or surrounded by, right? Because that's typically how it goes. And then you could have your post level, which would be the actual city. And that would be the landing page URL for that Google My Business account, if that makes sense. You can do that. You can grab the whole URL, so the subdomain and all the way down through the category and the post level, or category and subcategory level, and use that URL as the subdomain, as the landing page for the Google My Business profile. So that's what I would recommend. I think that was a good idea for Hernan to say use state subdomains, because, and then again, I would probably silo those out with counties as the top level categories and cities as the sub. I mean, you could technically probably even get away with using a simple silo structure on a subdomain, a statewide subdomain site, because you could essentially just go, it would be what a simple silo structure would be. Top level categories would be your city, period, because it's the city within the state. So you might not need that additional layer of like with a complex silo structure I mentioned, I would probably segregate the state by counties, and then I would add the cities within the counties. There is a logical hierarchy to that makes sense, and it makes sense to Google too. But again, I always recommend using a simple silo where possible, because complex silos can be exactly what the name implies, complex. And it's much easier to map these kind of sites out on a simple level. So what I would suggest, I mean, again, you could consider doing like a texas.clowncollege.com/city, and that's it. And you leave it at that level. And that would be a top level category page, which means you could still create supporting posts on a simple silo structure. You could create simple supporting posts and place them in that top level category, which would be your city. So that's what you would blog under in that category. And again, I think that's probably even a better way than using the complex silo structure. It just depends. Depends on how many services you're going to have within, all that kind of stuff. So again, Don, like Hernan mentioned, is whenever going to tackle a big project like this, I'll spend literally hours, sometimes days, mapping out how the structure is going to be built, because it's way better spending the time up front to really nail down how you're going to build the site, the architecture or the framework of the site. Because otherwise, if you start trying to build this out without a solid plan in mind, like for a large site like what you're talking about, or with multiple locations, all that kind of stuff, it can get ugly fast. And then once it's already built, it takes so much more time to try to clean it up than it does to just fix it, do it right the first time. And so it's a painful process for me to like map out those kind of sites. But I think it's necessary before starting to build. Okay. When you consider Servpro as a domain for every city in the country with 98.35% duplicate content, I'm sure I overthink the safety aspect when it comes to local, but I appreciate the help nonetheless. Yeah, I think that, again, my probably first strategy or the one I would probably select is what he mentioned, and that would be state subdomains. It seems pretty logical, easier to set up that way. MJ is up. He says, to add to Don's theme, when creating city pages, Servpro has a high degree of duplicate content. Is that still acceptable? What other ideas or content have you seen added to city pages and would be good to apply? Okay, so here's my thought, and it has been for the last 3 years, Don, or MJ, excuse me, about duplicate content for local sites. I have always tried to avoid that. And I have for at least the last 3 years, I've tried to avoid that. I know people are still building sites, and they're using the same content for all local sites, and all they're doing is swapping out the location data. I get that. I don't like to do it, because even though it may still work now, and I've been saying this for 3 years and it's still working, I know, but at some point that's going to stop working. And I would hate to build my digital portfolio, build up all my assets with that because it's working now. And so, and have that stop working and I lose everything. Right. And so I've always created unique content. Like, the tree service industry is my biggest lead gen industry. And I've got literally dozens of lead gen sites out there for tree service stuff. And every single page on every single site is unique content. That's no bullshit. Like, that is the honest to God's truth. Every page on every one of my sites is unique content. I'm not saying it wasn't content that was scraped and spun. That may be the case, but it's original. It's unique content on every single site. And I did that intentionally because I've always consider my properties long-term assets and not just, here today, gone tomorrow. And so because of that, I've always preferred to try to. Now, there are some strategies that you can use to reduce content costs, because I know that can be expensive. And here's one of them. Like, for example, you could have like a generic Superspun. And we have a provider, by the way, who's Keith Goodwin of Superspun. I think it's superspunarticles.com. He can do this for you. But create like like, for example, if plumbing's your niche and you've got, you could have a Superspun document set up, manually set up, created by somebody like Keith Goodwin of Superspun Articles, that you can, talk about just general plumbing stuff that you can use on every single page. But every time you output a new version of it, it's going to be considered unique. But then what you can also do is for each location page, right? So city specific or location specific, wherever you're going to use that content, you can also add some local data. So some information, it could just be a paragraph or two about the location. Like, in other words, like maybe some historical fact or some stuff that, I don't know, economic data or business growth data or something. You can just tie local content something about the location into that page, along with an outputted version of a super spun, whatever. And my point is, it makes the page unique enough because, first of all, the content, I don't like to use spun content on like money sites, guys, but for something like this where you're going to be mass producing multiple location sites, it's really the only way to go, right? Or else your content costs are going to be astronomical if you're going to be scaling. So get something that's manually spun. And again, Keith Goodwin's super spun articles are a great way to, he's really good at that. Like they produce really good spun documents. So when you unspin it, it's very readable. It's not like the typical garbage crap that you get from spinning stuff in like your own spinning software, if that makes sense. So you could check that out and try that. But then, by adding additional content that's locally relevant, that's going to be unique on every page, obviously, because you're going to be talking specifically about that location. And so that adds that level of unique, locally relevant content that should actually help it to rank and should also make it safer from potential, penalties in the future for it being duplicate content.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you, Bradley. The thing is that if you go the extra mile with these websites, you can turn them into real assets because, at some point I was doing, I don't know, 1 million pages website or 3 million pages website or, I don't know, huge Serp Shaker or Lead Gadget websites. And the reality is that was a grind,
Yeah.
It was like literally every day launching 10 new websites with 10 new, it was a grind. And the reality was it was a churn and burn. It was a real churn and burn strategy because those websites, we all knew that, they weren't going to last. They were all duplicate spun garbage content that were all set up for Amazon and AdSense on some cases and affiliate websites. It was a grind, Yeah. So you can either invest your time a little bit more and turn them into real assets that you can later serve ads to these. This is important because if this is a real asset and you're spending, I don't know, a month setting this up, you want to keep, you want to keep it and expand it and scale it. Or you can go the other route, the lazy quote unquote route, which is never lazy. You're always spending a lot of time and money and resources for a project that you don't know how much it's going to last and that's destined to fail if you're, using spam tactics. I mean, there are people that make a decent amount of money out of this and, they need to be always on top of things because otherwise Google can come and, they can de-index all of the XYZ websites that you have. And that's a pain in the ass. That's a big blow. And that's, that can put your business to sleep real fast. Yeah. So,
last year we were building, we hired a couple of VAs and I trained them myself to build those mass page sites using Lead Gadget and the ATM. There's nothing wrong with the software, the application. That worked great. It did exactly what the hell it was supposed to do, which was build 30,000 page sites in a matter of minutes. Like the long part was setting up the content, preparing for the build. Once that was all done, preparing for the build, you click the deploy button and like within 10 minutes, you got a 30,000 page WordPress site. It was amazing. And it worked well. But the problem was we had hired 2 VAs and we built, I think we built 785 sites. I think it was 785. It was just under 800 sites, I believe, on XYZ domains. And, we were paying the labor for these 2 VAs. That was their full-time job to build sites all day long, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And we had, like I said, just under 800 sites. And, think about all those domains we bought. Even like not all of them were XYZs. And we got caught up in one of those, the big one last year where Google came through and de-indexed a bunch of sites. And we lost, out of 785 sites, we lost like 90% of them. It was ridiculous. It was like, literally we had under 100 sites that remained intact that weren't de-indexed. And it was so painful because it was like, we're talking thousands of dollars in labor and content and domains that was just gone, wiped out in an instant. And so we started buying from, and in part of it was the XYZ domains, but that wasn't entirely all of it. So we started buying drop domains, expired domains, using a domain scraper, right? So we go out and find domains and then we would sort by your topical trust flow and try to build on expired domains within at least the same ballpark. So in other words, the content that we were going to be building on that site with the 30,000 pages was relevant to what the topical trust flow theme, the primary theme of that site was. But it was never perfect because we were doing them in mass. So we had to, we kind of like had a streamlined process of vetting domains, and it wasn't perfect by far, I can tell you that. So we started buying the expired domains at like, 10, depending on .coms, .nets, .orgs, whatever, it would range anywhere from, $10 to $20 per domain. And then we started rebuilding again. And like, we ended up realizing, I don't know, about another couple $1,000s in and having several more sites de-indexed, that it was just a strategy that we just didn't want to pursue anymore. I know some people that are absolutely crushing it doing that kind of stuff. Personally, I don't like churn and burn projects because I prefer to spend my time on building an asset that's going to produce revenue, as far down the road as I can see. And so personally, I don't like the churn and burn strategy as much as I've tried to do it in the past. And I've had some success, there's no doubt. I just prefer to spend my time actually building assets that are going to be not subject to Google wrath at any given moment. So. All right, Columbia Jones is up. She says, when using LiveRank Sniper, it is my understanding that the thumbnail, title, description, etc. are placeholders. It is also my understanding that I should use a persona YouTube channel to poke. So when streaming the video, I want to rank into the position held by the poking placeholder. Can I safely stream to a money channel or channel I value highly? Or do I have to stream it to the persona channel? Do I accomplish this by just streaming it through LRS, or do you recommend some other method of streaming? No, Columbia. If you are, the placeholder is generated. So what a placeholder is, what you're talking about, is a scheduled live event, which is indexable. So in other words, if you go to YouTube and you go to live events, you schedule a new live event and you set it to public, then it will index. Whether there's it'll index prior to the event commencing, right? So it'll index the moment that you hit like the save button with it set to public. So that's what publishes that scheduled live event, which makes it indexable. However, you have to now you're right. Once that's indexed, if it ranks or whether it ranks or not, whatever, that is a placeholder. So wherever it lands in the SERPs, that's a placeholder. But you can only stream through that channel where that placeholder is. Like, you've identified that that's a keyword that can rank from YouTube. So you can use a money channel to now target that keyword. It's not going to take over the place of the placeholder from the persona account, though, because in order for you to actually inject a video into that placeholder, you have to stream through the channel where that placeholder was originated. So that where that scheduled live event was originated. Does that make sense? So you can do that with LiveRank Sniper. I believe, so you can click the upload or whatever button, the tab, it's the other tab, and then go select the file and then wait for the manual process. And that's loading, that's going to stream to the scheduled event through the persona account that originated the scheduled event. Does that make sense? But again, if you already know that keyword can rank with a persona account, a poking channel, right, which probably isn't connected to anything else on the web, probably doesn't have a syndication network, there's probably no inherent channel authority with that channel. So, but you were able to rank for a scheduled live event for a keyword, then you should be able to go target that with your money channel and be able to rank, meet or exceed where that placeholder scheduled live event is ranking from the persona channel. Now, again, I say it should, but we are talking about Google. And stranger things have happened. And what I call always an algorithmic anomaly. There is a chance that your money channel won't rank for the keyword that the persona channel does. It's unlikely. It probably will, but I have seen that happen. It's the weirdest thing. You use a bunch of shitty, spammy poking accounts to test keywords, and you get a list of those that rank, and then you go target those with the money channel with syndication networks, and some of those keywords don't rank. And that's kind of like a head scratcher. But it's just part of the random ranking algorithm of Google, or what Terry Kyle called it, the random ranking factor. So anyways, LRS or LiveRank Sniper will stream through the channel that set up the scheduled live event. You can use another software to stream. It's still going to be through the same YouTube channel though, but you could use like OBS, for example. OBS is free. I don't know why you wouldn't just use LiveRank Sniper. Other than LiveRank Sniper, you don't get to see the process. It basically pulls up like a command prompt window, and all you see is a bunch of code scrolling up the screen, and that's it. But with like OBS, for example, which is free, OBS, you can just grab the stream key for that scheduled live event, add that to OBS, and then you can actually like control how the stream works, and you can add opening slides and end slides, which can be like still images with calls to action. You can actually combine multiple videos and have transitions. You can do all kinds of other stuff with OBS, and again, that's free. And we've even got a couple tutorials on how to use OBS on our YouTube channel. Columbia. If you just go to Semantic, youtube.com, Semantic Mastery, and search our YouTube channel for OBS, live streaming, OBS, those kind of keywords, you'll see we've got a few videos to teach you how to do that if you want to do it that way. One other thing I would mention is if you're going to be doing a lot of that stuff, you might want to consider upgrading to Peter Drew's Hangout Millionaire, because I believe that you can add those same accounts to Hangout Millionaire after like you've poked with LiveRank Sniper, and then have Hangout Millionaire go automate the streaming of the videos to those scheduled live events through those accounts. It's the only way I know how to do it in bulk. Otherwise, using LiveRank Sniper to manually upload or stream each video to the scheduled placeholder, it certainly can be done, but it's a slow and manual process. Not because of the it's not a shortfall of the software. It's just that the software was not designed to do that for mass. It was really just like it's a one-on-one, one by one stream and you have to manually click a few clicks to get it to happen, and then wait for it to complete. Whereas with Hangout Millionaire, you could enter in, add those Hangout accounts, or excuse me, those YouTube accounts to the software, and then have it go stream. At least it's my understanding that it will go stream. And it will automate streaming one video after the next, after the next, after the next, until all the placeholders, as you called them, scheduled live events, have been, had the video added. Okay. That would be my recommendation. All right, we're almost out of time, and it looks like we are pretty good on questions. So Greg says, how many Twitter real active accounts can we have before Twitter doesn't like it? I currently have 2 Twitter accounts, but I want to take over a family member's project and add another account for that using my email IP address as well. Thank you. Greg, I've created, well, I'm not much of a Twitter user, but because of, IFTTT accounts or syndication networks and stuff that I've created, I've probably created well over 100 Twitter accounts on my IP. It's not how many, at least as far as I know, it's not how many accounts you have created under one IP. It's how many accounts in what time frame that matters. Like if you try to create too many accounts in 24 hours, you can call. I've never tried to create too many Twitter accounts to ever be blocked. But I know that I'm sure there's a threshold, just like there is for like Tumblr or Google or anything else. You'll get flagged, and it'll put you through the verification ringer in order to open accounts if you do too many on any single IP within a 24-hour period. Do you guys know of any threshold?
I have no idea.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay. Yeah, I would just start. You should be fine, Greg. If you've only got 2 Twitter accounts tied to your IP, I'd just go ahead and start setting it up. It shouldn't matter. You're going to need a unique email, but that's it. All you need is a unique email. Remember, you can use your Gmail address, whatever your Gmail address is. Before the @ symbol, put plus and then whatever you want in there, and that's going to be considered a unique email address, and it'll just forward all the email to you, whatever your Gmail address is. So if it's Greg Pippin at Gmail, you could do Greg Pippin plus Twitter1 at Gmail, whatever, and all email will go to Greg Pippin at Gmail, if that makes sense. But it'll be considered a unique address. Columbia says, when creating a backup persona, does that need to be done using a proxy? It would seem that if Google did shut down one account, that they could access your persona Google account through your IP address. I would say no, Columbia. I wouldn't worry about that, because the thing is Google could, maybe they could do that. I've never seen that happen. If you're creating backup persona accounts, well, I recommend that you do that on IP proxies anyways, especially because if you're doing a lot of like poking, again, using LiveRank Sniper to poke keywords, you're going to be uploading or scheduling a whole bunch of live streams, live events from your IP, unless you're adding proxies to the software, which I know you can do, right? Which, again, I would recommend your persona accounts. You should have a dedicated proxy assigned to each persona account. And I know we talked about this last week, but that's why I talk, you should have at least 5 dedicated proxies. If you're doing a lot of this kind of work, you should have a minimum of 5, but probably, well, it depends on how, what your needs are. But I would start off with minimum of 5 dedicated proxies. It'll cost you about $20 a month. But it's totally worth it because you could assign each YouTube account to a separate IP. Then every single time you're running that software from your desktop, your IP, it's going to be running through the proxy for the persona account that it's assigned to, so that you're not creating a footprint, so to speak. All right, guys, remember spamming and using SEO tools. Proxies are basically required. It's just part of the business. It's part of what we have to do. Thanks, Adam, for putting that. I figured you would. All right, guys, we got 5 minutes. Dawn says, thanks, guys. This client is a partner, so we'll probably have 5 to 6 cities surrounding each Google My Business location. So long term, this would be 1,000 subdomains, more like 25 to 50. I understand the labor management involved, but this is a long-term client relationship equity. I'm okay with the work for my VAs. Just want to know if there's any unforeseen issues with too many subdomains. The state subdomain idea is a great option I hadn't thought of. Might go that way. Thank you, Hernan and Bradley. Appreciate it. Absolutely, Dawn. Absolutely. No problem. That's what we're here for, man. Kurt says, hi, thanks for the Weber. Can RVR and LRS be used in a coordinated way? Yeah, I talked about that, Kurt, in the bonus webinar, or the case studies that are in the bonus site that you should have access to if you bought either one of them. And essentially, I use the LiveRank Sniper to first identify like what I call pockets of low-hanging fruit, right? So if I'm going to, I've used it mainly just for local stuff. I started doing a near me, which is kind of local anyways, but a near me affiliate campaign with it. But that started to grow too large, and I had to redirect focus to some of the projects that are more realistic for the short term. So anyways, my point is if you have access to the bonus site, just go back through, and you don't have to watch both full on case studies because that would take you hours because they're both pretty detailed. But you could probably watch like the last 1 or 2 lessons within the LiveRank Sniper case study, and then the first 1 or 2 lessons in the Rocket Video Ranker case study, and you'll see how I talked about combining the two. But use LiveRank Sniper or any poking software to identify areas like to test keywords. Once you identify low-hanging fruit, then you can go target them using mass video spamming tools, which could be Rocket Video Ranker, it could be Hangout Millionaire, it could be Video Marketing Blitz, it could be MegaRay. There's a bunch of them. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. But the poking tools should be used on the front end because it's much faster and easier to just identify keywords before you go in and start setting up spam campaigns, which requires content generation and having a video and thumbnail creation and all that other kind of stuff that you need to do. So I like to do the testing first, and then once I've identified what is easy to rank for, then I'll go take the time to set up the campaign. Okay. All right, the last question. Does Hangout Millionaire add thumbnails and create a unique length for an identical video stream? Yes, it does, because first of all, Hangout Millionaire, you can add the thumbnails. Like essentially you can select a thumbnail folder, like an opening thumbnail folder and a closing thumbnail folder, and you can have different thumbnails in both folders, and it will pick at random. So what I like to do is we have a graphic designer, and I just tell him, like, I need 10 thumbnails, and he charges me $2.50 per thumbnail, and he'll, so it's $25, I get 10 thumbnails. And so I could have 10 opening and 10 closing thumbnails that are or you could even use the same 10 because it's going to pick at random. So you could have an opening thumbnail and a closing thumbnail from the same 10, but they're different on the same video. In other words, like, might be thumbnail number 3 and thumbnail number 7. But yeah, you can do that. And then let's see, what did he say? Unique length for identical video stream. Identical video stream is always going to be unique. The length will be slightly different because you can randomize that on Hangout Millionaire as well. You can say that you want the first slide, which is the thumbnail that I just talked about, the opening slide and the closing slide. You can say that you want the first thumbnail to appear between 2 to 8 seconds, for example. Or I like to keep it shorter on the opening thumbnail, like 1 to 3 seconds. But then on the closing thumbnail, I'll do like anywhere between like 3 to 10 or 12 seconds. Because then it'll just at random select how long it will display those based upon that range of time that you put in there. So all of that stuff, trust me, Peter Drew is a beast, man. He's he's really good, and he really coded that well. Like as far as like all the stuff that can be done to randomize it and reduce footprint stuff. So check it out. Okay. Okay, guys, we're done right on time. Thanks everybody for being here. That worked out with questions and everything. So.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
Okay, guys, we'll see everybody. What do we got? Just as a recap, tomorrow, what do we got?
Tomorrow is the structured data webinar, so sign up. The link is there, and then we'll probably send out a last-minute email, make sure everybody sees it. And then Monday, we'll have some information about Justin Sardi talking about using TubeSift and getting more out of YouTube. And then what else next week? I'm losing my brain here after an hour of something.
Webinar, bonus webinar.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, everybody. Hopefully, we'll see you guys tomorrow on Structured Data Webinar. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.